Whether it's filling your social media feeds or not, the Black Lives Matter movement is still raging, and it still needs your help.
Please consider donating to any Black Lives Matter causes you can, because we still have a long way to go towards a better future for all of us.
Donation links are provided below our description. Please check them out and consider donating. We hope you will. Thank you. And now, this week's episode. Hey gang, this episode contains spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled, like all the items in my refrigerator, watch the movies first.
Twinema.
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 Cinema.
Twinema.
Cinema.
Welcome once again, everyone, to another episode of Twinema Cinema. I am Joey, and this is
Max, and greetings of both the holly and jolly variety.
We are in that Christmas season, so we figured it was only appropriate for us to do some Christmas, in quotes, movies for this week's episode.
We say that in quotes because, well, it's not quite in the spirit of the holiday. Although, who could say what the true spirit of Christmas is anymore? But I'm just a jaded millennial. Who cares?
In case you haven't figured it out, which, unless we do a really good teaser, I don't know why you would have, we are talking about Black Christmas from, 1970? Or is it later than 1970?
1974 is the first iteration.
Nice, from 1974. And we're versing that against Black Christmas from
2006.
And apparently another Black Christmas came out when, Max?
2019. It's a fresh one.
So we are doing Black Christmas v. Black Christmas v. Black Christmas.
Just to make it simpler, the Black Christmases. Or Black Christmas cubed or whatever.
I will accept either of those for now, although maybe let's just try to avoid saying that.
What, Christmases?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tickling me in a good, bad way. It's like hitting your funny bone. It feels kind of awesome, but also what the hell is going on?
Also, if this holiday was a language somehow, it'd be Christmases.
All right, well, for me, on these movies, I don't think I've seen any of them, actually.
And I have only seen the original, which I only watched last year.
Oh, dang.
Even then, I don't remember a lot of it.
Right on. I guess. Do you wanna just start rolling into
What can you remember? I suppose I will, and I guess the real challenge is figuring out what makes these iterations different. This week, we're starting up a new feature called Remade, where we look at movies that have been, well, you get the idea. Yeah, as far as what makes these movies different, I could not tell you, having not seen the other ones, obviously, but that's the point of this game, to figure it out, huh? Well, the original Black Christmas came out in 1974, so that predated Halloween by 4 years. And that's like the preeminent slasher POV killer type deal. Director Bob Clark, kind of a visionary there for the guy, which is even crazier considering he directed Porky's and A Christmas Story.
I was just about to ask that. Is it the same Bob Clark? I didn't know that he did Porky's and A Christmas Story, let alone adding Black Christmas to it. So, I mean, he's got two iconic Christmas movies under his belt and one of like the preeminent sex romps.
And of course, the legendary Baby Geniuses franchise, also Bob Clark. Not one of his shining moments, so we won't mention it any further.
But it did, in fact, happen. Speaking of directors, filmmakers, was Bob Clark or any of the writers involved in any of the sequels, or are they just given credit as like story credit kind of thing?
I would assume it's just story credit, although we have to save that for, the history and box office portion. Insert jingle here.
We will find out the actual facts in the second half of this episode, but I would be curious if they were involved in any way, because some of the remakes that do come out are actually, involving some of the original talent.
It's especially these days, when you get, the rebootquels, as they're called by the kids.
Yeah, exactly. Just like, what was that? The Evil Dead remake. Sam Raimi was a producer on that.
Yeah, that was a sequel and a reboot.
What is that, a rebootquel? Was that what we just said?
Yeah, a rebootquel.
Nice. Sounds like NyQuil, but like cranked up. Like the opposite of NyQuil, actually. It's like NyQuil you take in the morning to get fucking jacked.
Like, there's a couple of them that came out in 2015. It's like Mad Max Fury Road and Jurassic World, both rebootquels.
Well, let's get back to our Black Christmases here. I kind of derailed it a little bit. Max, tell us a little bit about the original Black Christmas. Like you said that it's like a killer POV, which is something I didn't actually know. So that's fascinating. Yeah, what else can you remember?
Beyond that, it's about a group of girls in a sorority over winter break or Christmas vacation, or I forget. I assume it's called Black Christmas. It's going to be, holiday adjacent somewhere.
Makes sense. If it's not, then we really picked some bad movies for this particular season.
But yeah, it's like someone, presumably a dude, because it's always a dude, starts killing people in this sorority.
That's pretty straightforward. Nice and simple. Basically the same kind of premise as Werewolf in a Girl's Dormitory. It's like, says it all in the title on that one. Black Christmas, you got to go one layer deeper to find out that that's the same plot, just minus the werewolf, I'm assuming. Although I don't know, this could in fact be a werewolf movie. Or it could be a killer Santa Claus. I've wanted to see a killer Santa Claus movie for so long. I don't think this is going to be it, but like there is like Silent Night, Deadly Night, and I want to go check that out. I want to see
Garbage
Santa.
Day.
I know that reference, but I don't know anything about the movie. But I don't know anything about the Black Christmas movies. Like right now, the layout that you gave me of the plot is the most I've ever heard about the movies. Takes place in a dormitory over assumably Christmas break, and somebody starts killing co-eds.
Yep, that's exactly what happens, although the who, what, when, where, and why, I do not remember.
I'm going to go ahead and say that it takes place at UC Santa Cruz.
Well, it was snow, so I
Okay,
think
so
that's
not
wrong.
UC Santa Cruz. Okay, the University of Denver, Colorado. Yep, that sounds right. That's a college.
Yes, the good old UDC.
Ultimate Dodgeball Championships.
Wait a minute. Oh, boy. We're going off the rails again. We also have, the 2006 and 2019 versions. Joey, tell me why those are different.
Okay. Cell phones. Cell phones is the main reason these movies are different. Also, the internet. The internet and cell phones completely changed the premise of these movies. In the 2019 version, they're actually communicating with each other in separate dorm rooms through Skype. Or not Skype, because, Skype's dead now. Although they shouldn't be dead. They were ahead of the game by like 10 years. Anyhow, through Zoom or something similar, they are communicating with each other, and that's the differences. Just technology, and maybe they're at a different college. Otherwise, I'm thinking it's going to be basically the same premise.
Okay. I think it also just depends on the era it came out as well. It's like, I think 2006, you're gonna have some Bush jokes because it's like right in the middle of Bush.
Yeah, I guess politically, that would make a difference. The layout of the country would obviously be very different at these points, because in 1974, I'm trying to think. Well, I guess in the 70s is kind of like the beginning of the serial killer era in reality in so many ways. So it was definitely more on the conscious mind of the people that, man, this could really happen. I don't remember when Ted Bundy decided to start going insane and murdering people, but I mean, he did break into I don't know if it was a dormitory, but it was an apartment complex, and killed like 4 women in Florida who were all, I believe, college age students. So it's like in the 70s, this was just a lot more real. Although now we're aware of it, but it's kind of, we're aware of it in like a distant memory of like, oh, this is a thing that could happen, not a thing that is happening.
Yeah, by the time the first one came out, the Manson killings were just 5 years earlier, so everything was still fresh there.
Exactly. So I think that'll be a little bit different. And then obviously, since they're remakes, we're going to have like a little bit of parody elements in some of them. Hopefully it's not super prevalent and it's more an homage, but I don't actually know if they're supposed to be comedic in any way or if they were all serious.
Well, I think, they're going to try to be tongue-in-cheek, especially the 2006 one, I think, because that was only 10 years after Scream, which completely changed the game.
Oh, for sure. One of my favorite horror films, and then also it's the first horror film I ever saw. It started it all for me. If I wouldn't have seen Scream, I wouldn't be watching Black Christmases with you for this podcast.
Thank goodness for you, Wes Craven.
Rest in peace.
And then 2019, I think the biggest thing that's going to happen is it's going to be woke.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Maybe we'll even get like a a female killer or something, just to change it up a little bit in the 2019 version. It could make sense that somebody else in the dormitory trapped over Christmas break is starting to go insane, or it's just the same movie with just like slightly different changes. But I think you're correct that it's definitely going to be more politically correct, more woke, as you said. I think just being a little bit more aware of its audience and aware of people, I think is probably a pretty good guess for that movie.
That and the fact that it was actually written by a woman, which I could probably guarantee the previous two were not.
Well, we don't want to say that just in case they were, but you're almost 100% correct that it's probably not written by a woman. Hopefully one of them is. That'd be nice.
Well, I mean, I'm telling you, I think, the last one was written by a woman.
Oh, well, I meant the previous two is what I was referring to.
Oh, well, we can only hope. But yeah, my guarantees come with that big asterisk you have to use a microscope to find.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else that I can think of at the moment, so maybe we should get into this, huh? What do you think?
I got the popcorn ready, and it's going to be a little more than 4.5 hours this time, as this is our first triple feature.
Maybe watching all three of them will be what, the same length as Wyatt Earp?
Yeah, okay, so it could be, let's say 6 hours to be safe.
Yeah. So, hey, everybody, we will be back in about 6 hours.
And save us some eggnog.
For this episode's movies, you can find them at the following locations. Black Christmas 1974 can be found on Shudder.
Black Christmas 2006 is available for rental on all digital platforms.
And Black Christmas 2019 is available on HBO and HBO Max for streaming.
I love coffee. Do you love coffee? I love coffee too. You know what else coffee can do? It can help us keep this podcast going. So if you go to coffee.com/twinemacinema, ko-fi.com/twinemacinema, you can give us coffee or money coffee or coffee money. Oh man, we should pay with beans. Anyway, coffee.com/twinemacinema. Help us out. Thanks. Bye.
A high school girl's been murdered. Mr. Harrison's daughter is missing. And now at the house where she lives, the other girls are getting obscene phone calls.
Hello?
Hey, Mommy. Hey, baby.
Oh, no, please.
All is calm. All is bright. Who is in my house tonight?
Don't you have lots of toys to deliver to good little boys and girls?
You really shouldn't provoke somebody like that.
Is that Santa's reindeer? There's someone in the house.
Remember those idyllic scenes out of your childhood? After Black Christmas, they'll never be the same again.
My friend is missing.
9 times out of 10, the girl's just with a boyfriend.
I'm tired of running. Go, 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 go! Ho, 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 bitch.
You're my family now.
Hello and welcome back, listeners. My, Joey, we went on a festive holiday journey, didn't we?
Definitely unexpected, but quite enjoyable if you're a fan of the horror film genre.
And boy, are we. We got exactly what we wanted for Christmas, at least in the first installment.
Yes, I think we're similarly opinionated on these films, but we will find out through the course of this episode, starting with Black Christmas from 1974.
The OG, as it were, directed by Bob Clark, 1974. One of the first movies to use a POV with the serial killer involved, and it became a classic, although it kind of bombed when it first came out.
Yeah, I'm not sure the box office information. We'll get to that later, so I'm disappointed to hear that it bombed. But, you know, sometimes when you're ahead of your time, that's just what happens.
It's also thoroughly Canadian, so who knows what the exchange rate is there.
I didn't even think about it being a Canadian movie. That's fascinating. But let's go ahead and break down a little bit of the plot of the first film. If you want to go ahead and start us off, Max.
Well, for starters, it's Christmas.
Obvious. I mean, maybe not obvious, but yes, Black Christmas takes place during Christmas.
Mm-hmm. And we also have a house full of sorority girls, or I should say it's a sorority full of regular girls. I don't know. We have a sorority full of co-ed. Wait, they're not co-eds. It's just sorority girls. I fail at college.
Well, you know what? Sometimes women were referred to as co-eds back when women weren't allowed to go to college, so it kind of became a thing. But yes, we will refer to them as women throughout this episode.
All right, so yeah, we got a bunch of sorority women and their house mom, Mrs. Mack, living in their house on Christmas. Some have departed for the holidays, and these are the remnants. They're staying behind.
Yeah, we're stuck with, I can't remember exactly how many, but I think it was about 6 people who were left staying in the sorority house on Christmas. And guess what? Guess what happens, everybody?
They have a happy holiday.
No, a deranged lunatic who ends up becoming, I'm going to go with a spree killer, maybe a serial killer, breaks into their attic and starts picking them off one by one.
And half the time, the camera just sticks with him sneaking around, so it's a very tense movie.
One of the things that is definitely a hallmark of this movie is that POV camera creeping throughout the house. And also, another huge thing that goes along with that is his audio, his mutterings to himself, his deranged self-talk and communications through the phone lines. All of that really adds to that POV. We don't ever really see him in the movie, but we hear him. That's how his presence is most known, besides through the camera movements.
One by one, these girls are picked off, including the house mom, and eventually only one girl is left, and supposedly she kills the crazy person who we know as Billy, because he keeps saying his own name. And she thinks it's her asshole of a boyfriend, but it turns out she killed the wrong man. And at the very end of the movie, she's in hospice in the house alone. You just see the attic door open up, and you know she's dead as credits roll.
It's upsetting on 2 levels, the ending of the movie. One, I think it's upsetting because I think it's a great ending. Just leaving that open-ended and leaving him alive without him having been taken down like so often happens in other horror films, I think is a really good choice. But it's upsetting to me because they leave this poor woman alone in this house all by herself after she's been through the most traumatic experience imaginable, and they just leave her. They I couldn't leave someone alone in that situation. So just to watch them, even though they're trying to help somebody else in the case, they're taking someone else to the hospital, they just abandon her. it's very frustrating because we know that the killer is still alive. We know that he's there. We know it wasn't the boyfriend. Ugh.
And that's where the black part of Black Christmas comes in. It is a bleak movie with a bleaker ending.
And, since we were talking about Black Christmas and Christmas movies, we decided it would be a great idea to bring in our sister to help us talk about these Christmas movies because she is a Christmas expert, and we're going to bring her on the line right now. Say hello to everyone, sister.
Hello. I feel like this whole setup was just very rude, okay? I was here for some Christmas cheer and some storybook romance about a prince and a castle and something, but here we are, murder. And let's be honest, for a 1970s horror movie, this had less sex than the Hallmark movies. And it's just all disappointing all around. Okay.
Well, we wanted to help you out by plugging your Christmas Yuletide education. That's a 4-year degree, right?
I don't know. Are we allowed to be educated? I'm so confused.
Yes, you're allowed to be educated, but only if you live in a sorority house, I think. Because I don't think you're allowed to live with men at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess not. These girls were they're pretty edgy for the 1970s, like sorority girls. They had some like inappropriate posters, and one of them got pregnant. I'm saying the boyfriend maybe did deserve to die, and so that's kind of an okay ending in my book.
Well, he was like one step away from becoming a killer himself, so
Oh, for sure. He was 100% going to trap a woman in marriage and then like just domestic abuse the hell out of that situation. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just look what he did to that poor defenseless piano.
It's like, what did that piano do?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can say that she stood up for herself, and that's what created the violent situation. She wasn't going to take no Are we cursing on this podcast?
Fuck yes.
It happens very often on accident.
None of these girls were going to take any shit. They had a lot of autonomy.
Yeah, most of the girls had their own mind for the most part. It was actually refreshing because it was like the mother movie of a lot of tropes that'd be used for decades to come. So seeing all these women and their personalities come out was nice.
When you say it like that, it's also very disappointing because this movie coming out in 1974 and kind of setting the standard for that, actually giving these women like fully fledged characters for the most part, not all of them, but they do a pretty good job of giving people background and giving them agency and autonomy. Then all of the slasher films that come after it pretty much just take all of that away. So way to go, Black Christmas, for starting us off right.
These women, they're adults. Like even today, a lot of shows represent college-aged women as complete immature children. And these characters were definitely like full-fledged adults with certain levels of maturity. Obviously, you've got one that's like a drunk a bit, parties a little bit too hard, and you have like a more innocent one who of course gets taken out right away, but that also kind of the reverse of the trope. She was like the most innocent. She was supposed to meet her dad and she gets taken out right away. But you have these like adult women, they're not really sexualized. There's like some sexual jokes, but they're in ownership of it. It's not made on their behalf. So it is definitely a very I think rare thing for that time. And we've gone really downhill in a lot of directions.
And also for the movie to start out this genre of this a final girl slasher type film, and then like you just said, started off with the innocent one is the one who gets taken advantage of and murdered immediately, and then all of the following films just decide to not use that trope to create their own inversion of it, which then became the trope that lasted through decades.
It's also kind of fun to see one of the boyfriends of the girls dresses up as Santa and is interacting with children at one point, and he says fuck a lot. It's like, Tara, can you tell us what you think about that?
I feel like it's an accurate portrayal of fraternity life.
But the children, they're scarred from hearing Santa say fuck.
One of the sorority women feeds that kid alcohol as well at some point. So, it was a different time. Speaking of one of the boyfriends, I think it's also interesting that the boyfriend of the first girl is just like, I'm going to handle this. I'm going to go talk to the cops. I'm going to handle this. I think it's interesting because it's not like, oh, they didn't listen to the woman. They didn't listen to the adult man who was like nervous about his teenager. And then this like college age hockey player's like, you're going to listen to me. You're going to take care of this. And they were like, yes, sir. It's so interesting.
They do a good job of portraying how outsiders are treated differently. I think that's one of the things that moment really shows, is because the hockey player is a townie. He's from the town. He knows the people. He knows the police officers. So they immediately listen to him, but he also does come in pretty angry. And I think that intimidated the guy at the front desk pretty effectively. That hockey player guy was at least 100 pounds more than the front desk guy. And the front desk guy is also
wildly incompetent. Yeah.
Well, yes, definitely incompetent. But what I thought was super interesting too is the fact that they even give those characters more depth. That's a thing that the other films do a really bad job about. They give a little bit of depth to the main cast, but they don't really give anyone else anything. In this movie, we actually get to see what the police officers in the station, how they are functioning, who they are as people. Not like perfectly and not too deep, but they made their mark on the moments. I mean, that whole damn running joke that came through, like the fellatio joke, it really worked. I didn't expect that to come back. I just assumed it was going to be that one-off moment in that scene where she's fucking with the guy. But nope, it comes back and it's a great moment. Oh, it's something dirty, isn't it?
I think the one thing there though that is just dramatically not like, it's just inaccurate, is that the cops would be like, oh, your daughter's been missing for 6 hours. We're going to shut down the city. We're going to figure it out. We're going to listen to you. Oh, a man's been calling you. We're going to tap your phone lines and listen, and we're going to put all of our guys on your phone. We're really going to listen to you and commit to you, especially in the 70s when you didn't even have like a 48-hour like rule. You didn't have Amber Alerts or anything like that, as if they're just going to drop everything for somebody who they already said they thought was like out of cabin with her boyfriend. And then the boyfriend shows up and they're like, oh, I guess she's definitely dead now. We better look into it.
Like, I feel like the detective played by John Saxon put together enough dots to justify the effort. But yeah, you're absolutely right. They kind of jumped into that plot real quick.
Well, the thing I like about that, though, is that's what you expect and want a police department to do. It's just not so often what happens. There is a permeating belief, I think, through movies and through culture that there's like a 24-hour rule. You can't report someone missing unless it's been at least 24 hours. And that's not true. That is a complete lie that has just permeated society. You can report someone missing very quickly. Whether they believe you or not, they have to generally be missing for a little bit longer period of time. But if it's like a person who is differently abled or mentally incapacitated in some way, if they've been missing for even like 2 hours, police departments can jump on that and do it. And that's what this guy did. But you're completely right. The fact that they actually did it is in and of itself a surprising as hell thing in the movie.
I think what you said there, I think you want the police to respond this way, but I don't think most people would expect them to respond this way. I think that no way in my mind would I expect the police department to like respond. We trust everything you're saying. Everything must be true. We're going to jump on it. I mean, maybe in this town, those are the biggest crimes they've ever had. But like the fact that they jumped on it before the kid, so a girl gets murdered, like unrelated to the sorority. It's found dead in the park. And then it's obviously like, we've got something big going on. But before that, like any expectation of like help, I don't think you would have that coming. Like they would commit all of their officers in the building to it. Though I have to say like the actors and stuff did a great job. I just don't think it's the most realistic. And I think it is it's a perspective of like maybe white 1970s, like Canada. But like, like the expectation that the cops are there for you.
And I think the other thing too kind of goes into that, as I was mentioning earlier, about the boyfriend knowing the police officer, having a personal relationship with the officer in charge of the department. Doesn't seem like he's the police chief, but he's definitely in charge that night. I think that's the part that like puts it over into the believable realm in terms of the movie, because I think you're right. That kind of a robust response up until somebody's actually been murdered seems a little bit ahead of itself. But we've talked about this movie quite a bit here. Maybe we got to get into the remakes.
Yes, let's jump ahead 30 plus years to 2006, where Dimension Pictures, that kind of the genre arm of the Weinstein machine, decides to remake Black Christmas. I'm not sure it was actually in demand, but they were kind of in the midst of a resurgence of remakes of classic horror films. And Black Christmas was the only other untapped one in the market, I suppose.
And it's bad. I want to just say that right up front, because I've got a lot of problems with this movie. But the thing that's overall the biggest problem that I have with it is it doesn't know what it's trying to be at all. We're jumping all over the place timeline wise. I think this one is surprisingly close to the same story structure as the original Black Christmas. We have a murderer who is hiding out in the attic and he's attacking these sorority women. But the biggest difference in terms of the beginning of the movie is we get all these flashbacks and we get this story. It's probably 15 minutes of screen time dedicated to the backstory of this murderer, about his life, his upbringing, and there's even some sequences that are shot in an asylum that he was sent to after he murdered his family in the 90s. So it's a completely different movie, although it does follow the same storyline. They just put a whole bunch of other aspects to it in there that are really unnecessary, because we give way more characterization to the villain, to the killer in this movie, than we do to any of the women.
And I think I know the reason for that particular development as well, as right after Black Christmas, you get Halloween in 1978, and that's the beginning of the horror icon. You never see Billy in the original movie, but boy, do you see Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees. There's a central anchor of most horror franchises after that. So that thinking would continue to any type of horror movie after that. You need that main villain to hate.
I mean, I guess that's fair thinking, but it's terrible in terms of the storytelling of this movie. I mean,
Oh,
even in those movies, they're iconic more because of their looks and their character design than necessarily their backstory. And those movies are made good because of the characters they interact with. If Laurie Strode wasn't a pretty decent character, Halloween would suck in like every version of it.
It's funny you mentioned that too, because the very next year, Rob Zombie would remake Halloween, doing pretty much the exact damn same thing, giving Michael Myers a backstory, and Laurie Strode became a nothing character after that. So yeah, that's the ballpark.
We're gonna add story details to this story that we want, but that nobody asked for. And that's what Black Christmas is it's just, I don't think anybody asked for this movie. I really think it just, somebody picked things out of a hat and was like, all right, well, they remade Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So what else came out in 1974? Well, I guess we're going to remake Black Christmas. I guess there's maybe some kind of coincidence with that timeline wise, but I'm not sure.
Tara, what would you imagine is the reason they would choose to make Billy, this, suddenly backstoried person, extremely jaundiced? Like, they wanted to make him a yellow person.
Oh, yeah.
Why would they do this?
I completely forgot. They literally make him have a skin condition that causes his skin to be yellow. And that's not a thing in the original movie at all, but they decide to add that to this movie, and I have no fucking idea why.
First of all, we never see him in the original movie. He might have been yellow the entire time. Okay, so 1. 2, okay, he's not getting enough vitamins, and I think it's really just a portrayal of our poor healthcare system, because if you're housed as a mentally ill, you still need to have a full rounded meal, okay? So that's a problem, and so we should sympathize with him. He's also killing sorority women, and who cares about women? So, like, we need to sympathize. Purely, I think that's part of it. It's like we need to focus on creating this like dark. It's not quite like making him a hero, but it is being like, there are reasons for why he's doing this, and I think it actually ruins part of the scare factor. Not knowing why a maniac is doing things is part of what like makes the original more scary. You're just like, this is just happening. We don't know who he is. We don't have any reason for it. We can't predict. And spelling out too much of somebody's background, aside from just a general like, Michael Myers escaped from a hospital and he's out there murdering. You don't know all of his life story in the original, and
you don't want to.
Yeah, it makes him more scary. You can't predict what he's going to do. And this is, nobody cares. Nobody needs that.
I mean, I think part of why that became a thing is because in the 70s, we had such a large string of serial killers in the United States, and we started to learn about the mentality about why serial killers came to be, all of their issues growing up, and people wanted to tell that story. But the thing is, what makes those originals in the 70s work so well is that from a normal, like from an everyday person perspective, when someone's trying to kill you, you don't give a flying fuck about why they're trying to kill you. It is completely irrelevant, and it's terrifying because someone's just trying to murder you. Yeah, if you're trying to understand why they came to do this as a psychiatrist, psychologist, police officer, profiler, yeah, that makes sense. You want to be able to track it so you can predict it. But from an audience perspective, nobody needs that information. We don't want to sympathize with him or them, because it's just, if we sympathize with them, well, first off, it didn't even work in Black Christmas. It was, I wanted to sympathize with them, but they kind of made it really hard to do that.
Yeah, I think there's a different, like, you can make a great psychological thriller where you're trying to, determine psychologically like why somebody's doing something, and you're the cops or you're whoever, and you're Silence of the Lambing trying to figure out what's making this person tick. And you could also make a really great, like, I mean, even just like the TV show You, right? You sympathize with that character more than anything. You understand why he's doing it. You don't want him to get caught. You can do something like that well. I don't think, it's just also the matter of making a bad film.
Yeah. When you do a bad job, no matter what you were trying to do, it doesn't matter. If you try to hit a home run and you strike out, you still struck out. Like, nobody cares that you were trying. So that's definitely part of the problem with this movie.
But I did want to make a point. Going back to your hospital comment, since this is an American remake versus a Canadian original, that actually could be a hidden meaning, dug up out of someone's ass because, that wasn't intended. But it's like, okay, so he was in an American healthcare system, so of course everything went to shit.
Yeah, I think it adds up. He also is maybe not a great person, but, they should have been able to cure jaundice. It's not like that complicated of an illness, okay?
It's out of that of the producers watched Sin City the year prior and like, that yellow bastard. Everyone loves that guy.
Oh my God. Sin City came out before this?
Yes.
Well, then that's exactly what happened. Or if that's not what happened, the moment this movie was released, they were like, someone's like, so you guys watched Sin City, right? And then the producers watched it and they're like, oh, no way.
Or I think that they're trying to make him maybe like a mutant type creature. So that's not just like he's almost inhuman or extra human than these people, than everybody else by being some kind of other in a different way, a visual way.
That makes sense.
And they definitely try to portray that because he kills with such an efficiency, it can't only be one person. And of course, it's not. There's two killers in this movie.
Yes, it's his sister. His
daughter.
His sister daughter, because
it's his sister, his daughter, his sister, his daughter.
So they do a really strange callback with this movie because a rocking chair is pretty prevalent in the first film, as it's where he leaves one of the women that he murders. And it's this haunting image throughout the movie that they keep cutting back to from her perspective in this plastic bag, murdered looking out a window. Well, in Black Christmas 2006, they decided, you know how we're going to make this rocking chair really dark? Well, we're going to have Billy's mom rape him in this chair so that then she gives birth to their daughter, who then joins Billy later on a killing spree, killing all of these. Like, there's so much unnecessary, fucked up backstory that they put into Black Christmas 2006 that just takes away from the runtime. It is, I think I got the runtime right here. It is 3 minutes shorter than the original, but they add 15 minutes of like superfluous story that just takes us away from caring about the women that are getting murdered. That's what makes a good horror movie most of the time, is you care about the people that are being attacked.
Which is unfortunate because I like most of the women they cast in the movie and they kind of just wasted them.
Well, it's the Weinstein Company.
This is true.
Yeah, whenever they're involved now, you can't not think about what the casting was like for the movie, and it just fucks up everything when you think about that. So that probably happened in this movie. There are young, beautiful women in a sorority. That's the cast.
Can't be good.
No, can't be good.
I do think giving the serial killer that insane of a backstory is almost like letting him off the hook quite a bit. And I feel like in reality, we all know that most serial killers were just like dropped on their heads as a baby. That's all that happened. I'm just kidding. People have horrible histories, but I just think like you're giving the audience all these reasons to be like, this poor guy, this horrible things happened, and like horrible things did happen. He did not have to murder people though.
Exactly. Like because he kills his parents in the movie. Well, he kills his mom and he kills his stepdad. And so that's pretty justified through all the abuse that they put him through. That's pretty fine. But then everything thereafter, he's a broken man doing all of this stuff. And you can't, like, you have to understand where they're coming from, but you don't have to accept it as okay.
Not to get way off topic, but I'm just saying that like women get more abuse historically than men, and just the worst kind of abuse, and like still not a lot of female serial killers out there. So
yeah, statistically, it is not looking good for men, specifically white men.
Yeah.
We seem to be the ones doing all of the murdering in these serial killer spree killers.
You could go through a lot of crap. You don't have to go kill a sorority house, but you know.
Exactly.
They had it coming.
Well, that is certainly what they feel is the case in Black Christmas 2019. Those women definitely had it coming. Why? Because they were standing up for their rights. That's all they were doing. Calling out bullshit. And you know what? Calling out bullshit and going to college, getting an education, you're invading men's spaces. And therefore, you shouldn't be allowed to live. Or so that's the premise of the fraternity in Black Christmas 2019.
Feminism, man, you know. I will say, as the Christmas expert, this movie had a lot of Christmas decor. Okay, they did not let you forget it for a second. There was a sparkly light on every piece of furniture in every sorority house we saw. There was tinsel everywhere. They just didn't ever let you forget that. They did have one Jewish character, though. She did leave, so she didn't have to get murdered.
She was murdered, yeah.
Oh, yeah, she did. She was about to leave, and then she got murdered.
Because the damn cat.
Speaking of the cat, why in the original movie is the cat a boy named Claude? And then they change it to Claudette. Like, why did they feel the need to, like, specifically change the gender of the cat?
Because this movie is so on the nose already, they just wanted to hammer it home.
They're like, there's no men in this house, not even our cat.
Which is weird, because originally they used a male cat, and the director had it replaced.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Well, you know what? I don't know why they felt the need to do that, but it was their choice, obviously.
Their cat, their choice, yeah.
Oh, God. That is a horrible line in the movie where he's like, you can choose to be obedient. It's your body, your choice.
There's so many moments in this movie. It's like, yes, this is entirely justified in today's society, but wow, is this coming across as flat.
But the plot of this is much different.
Oh, yeah. We take a wild left turn on this one. Tara, tell us about the plot of this movie.
Yeah, so this one, starts out, you've got sorority women, you got like a woman getting killed right off the bat, similarly from this unknown killer, except that you do see the killer in like this Grim Reaper style cape with these like black mask on, and these women are getting picked off. But there's like this subplot of a fraternity brother who sexually assaulted or raped the main sorority sister. And as you're like going along, you're realizing that these sorority sisters are getting picked off, and like suddenly there's this confrontation. You see that there's something creepy going on at the fraternity house. There's a weird professor played by Carrie Ells. And then in this big confrontation at the house, you determine there's like a bunch of these Cape dudes going around killing, and there's something weird happening. And you realize like these guys are, I don't know, they've become some kind of creature, or like they're under some kind of spell. And then you literally realize that there's like some kind of dark arts, Harry Potter, dark fraternity that's like just wants women to obey and be submissive, and they're just gonna like force them into it. And all of these women who like done them wrong, which is all the sororities at the college have done them wrong, and so they're all out to try and kill all these women unless they obey. It's their body, their choice. They can choose to obey. And it just takes on a really weird turn of being this like witchcraft, satanic, women killing fraternity.
Black goo in a statue type deal, yeah.
Yeah.
We've seen it 100 times, yeah.
Yeah, statues like crying black goo, they bleed black goo, the cat likes to eat black goo.
It's a literal black goo Christmas.
I think we were discussing this movie with a friend of ours earlier today, Kate, and she mentioned how this film, the 2019 Black Christmas, is like a spiritual remake. It's not a straight remake, but it's more of a spiritual remake. And I can kind of see that. There's some story elements that definitely come through that are similar. The themes are somewhat similar. And there's enough similarities overall that I can kind of see it. But it's definitely not really what I would consider too much of a remake. It's very different.
I actually wouldn't call it a remake at all, honestly, because like calling this a Black Christmas remake is like calling Happy Death Day a Black Christmas remake, just because it happens to have a female protagonist, and you see her dorm, and there's a killer, and yeah, there's not enough.
Yeah, I have to say, it just there's so many plot points that are in this movie that are not at all in any of the other ones. There's no like rapist and confronting this like whole fraternity, like this fraternity that didn't exist in the other film, aside from like a quick mention of a sister brother fraternity. You have this whole group of evil people. You don't have just like this one killer. And I just prefer a horror movie that is truly, like could really happen. There could be a man in the attic picking you off. I just don't believe that there really was, a fraternity of black magic people led by Carrie Ells trying to come for you with the goo.
When you see him, you know he's the bad guy right away. There's no helping you there.
Oh yeah, I texted Joey the second I saw him that I said, I'm calling it now. Carrie Ells is the killer. And then I went off and I believed that, I thought maybe, okay, he's reading this book. It's going on about how it's like this super misogynistic, anti-feminist portion of a book. And then he's like, joke's on you, class. This is actually written by a woman. And then it's like, oh, what? And so my mind was like, oh man, I bet this whole movie, like the killer is going to be like a self-hating woman. And Carrie Ells is just foreshadowed, or it's just a red herring. And I was wrong. It was just him. It's just him. But like it was a like Snape style dark magic cult.
In a way, it is kind of like a Harry Potter movie, right? Takes place during Christmas time. We've got black magic that the women are able to defeat because we all know that more or less Hermione saves the day in every one of the goddamn Harry Potter movies. So maybe it's a lost Harry Potter movie.
There's creepy magic goo. Yeah, it could be in there. It's either that or it's a sequel to Ghostbusters 2, which also had some weird goo in it.
Yeah, I mean, the goo is really like one of the main characters in this film.
The moment you saw Carrie Elwes or Ells, I've never looked up his pronunciation.
I just called him Wesley the whole time.
But the moment you see him in the movie, he's just like, he's too big of a star in the movie. He stands out so differently from the rest of the cast. Also, he's doing he's reading out of like you said, a very anti-feminist book. And so it's just like, he's already put off as a bad guy immediately. Like they try to flip it, and like they try to use him as a misdirect, but he never redeems himself in any way. They do a really bad job of making you convincing you that he's not the bad guy. He's the bad guy from the moment he's on screen, both because of his character in the movie and his fame outside of the movie. It's a lot like, I'm going to do a little spoiler here for Knives Out. The moment that you see Chris Evans in Knives Out, you're like, he has to be integrally part of the plot, because otherwise, why would he do this movie? Not enough celebrities do small roles in other movies, so he's clearly involved. So the moment he carries there, you can't think of anything else.
Like overall, the whole movie seemed like it was a little too much on the nose. Like it was working off of checklist of relevant issues that by all means needed to be addressed in film at some point, but it's very out of place in this particular kind of remake. You had your Brett Kavanaugh, your Brett Turner. There was a Me Too thing with Wesley there. So yeah, it was kind of uncomfortable isn't the right word, but it was distracting from the plot of the movie that it's like, okay, this is the latest headline.
Yeah, it really felt like the whole identity of some of these women were just being woke. And I get that, activism, like you're very focused on it, and you have the one character where that is who she is. She's fighting the patriarchy like one step at a time. But there just isn't, like, I don't know what these women majored in. I don't know what they had, like what their interactions were with other people, aside from just like talking about the assault and like needing to overcome it and be empowered from confronting people. Like that's it. That's all they had going on. Except for the one woman who got like killed in the beginning, got a little bit about her life, but like, that's it. You got nothing. And it's just, for a movie that is apparently directed and written by women, it feels like it's written for a male audience, maybe just trying to remind them that they, women have rights, which, maybe is necessary.
Yeah, like this could have been a normal, I'm using the air quotes there. This could have been its own type of movie. It didn't have to be a remake of existing IP. In fact, with the whole supernatural twist with the black goo and such, it should have been.
It definitely feels out of place in our remakes. It doesn't feel like it remade the previous movies. The story is just too different. It's completely out there and doing its own thing. It's just like they labeled it Black Christmas, but there is a number of things in the movie that are callbacks to the previous films. So it's aware that it's called Black Christmas, I guess. I think that's kind of what it feels like, is it knows its title, so we have to add these elements to it. But in some ways, those elements take a little bit away from the movie it's trying to be.
I just want to see taking some of these elements of feminism and this empowerment. I think that's not necessarily terrible character points, but I think I'd rather see like a not so magic cult movie and see these women be like very empowered and fighting off like this bad guy, this maybe a like very real dark fraternity that commits crimes and gets away with it and covers it up and maybe kills some women so that they can't be witnesses and like takes them down and fights the, you know, patriarchy in that way. But then you just get this like whole like these guys are just trying to like force these men to become these alpha males. They get the black goo smudged on their forehead, they become alphas, and then they also just have like the required need to kill all the women that done them wrong. It just I think it moves so far into the ridiculous that then all of the things that these women are driven by, this need to empower themselves, becomes kind of ridiculous along with it. And that's not really, I think, what you want. You want them to be not like it to be a completely sane thing for them to do, to be empowered.
What you said about maybe this movie is more intended for a male audience really actually makes a lot of sense, because I think they had to, in a way, make these characters so evil and it's kind of out of their control, because as soon as you get into the realm of these villains are real people doing real things, a lot of people kind of like immediately go into the not all men argument, which one of the boyfriends actually makes that or the boyfriend, he's the only boyfriend in the movie, makes that exact argument to one of the sorority women. And so I feel like that might have been their reasoning, but at the same time, that really, as you said, takes away so much from the story that they're trying to tell, because it does put it into the realm of ridiculous. Even if that was even if you were gonna try and make a movie with like these fantasy witchcraft elements, it's still a ridiculous version of that.
Oh yeah, like I recently watched the Craft remake, and directed by Zoe Lister-Jones. It's like, you know, directed by women, made by women, and it is, I mean, you add the like magic aspect being a little bit too like Hollywooded up. Like the Craft was like, there's not a lot of special effects, but it's like dark, and they just made it a little bit too like mystical. And then you take these like feminist points, but it just like gets so lost in the kind of ridiculous suspension of disbelief that it makes everything seem like it's not in reality. And like I would love to see, you know, how like Lovecraft Country or County makes the racism seem more terrifying than the monsters themselves, right? Like the most scary, intense moments you experience in some of that is like the real fear that, you know, Black people in the South experienced from racism be so terrifying. And you can take that toxic masculinity and make it so terrifying. You aren't believed. No one's coming to save you. Men have so much power. You could take all those things and make it a truly terrifying movie. And I just, because it got so ridiculous with like the black goo and the crying statue, and like it just lost all of that essence.
Most of this, I think, actually was intentional, because they made it PG-13 so it could be more accessible to young women who are trying to get into horror. That was the intention of the writer and director. But playing devil's advocate for a moment, I feel like they stole Black Christmas, again using air quotes on steel, just because they wanted, Black Christmas is kind of a tone, a feeling to begin with. Like the original one was, I think, originally called Someone is in the House, and they renamed it to be more marketable. And then second one, straight remake. This one, if you just put a subtitle in there and make it feel like a sequel, you fix so many things that pure fans would have problems with.
Yeah, I think a great thing they do in the original Black Christmas, and they do reuse it, is the convenience of having a house that's like in flux, where people are going out of town. They're not supposed to be home. So them like not being around, them getting killed off, and especially in the 70s when you aren't texting people, they don't constantly know where you are. Your phone being off isn't like you don't have a phone. They use that time of year to make it so that people are, you know, leaving the house. There's less people there, but people could have gone home, and it's a great tool. But it's not really about Christmas. Like you happen to see some Christmassy things, and it's winter, but like it's, and there's like a nice fire going all the time. I don't know why that fire was burning anyway, but like it's not covered in Christmas. And I feel like this latest one is covered in, like I said, there's tinsel on everything. There's a sparkly light on everything. They're just talking about it all the time. and it's just not as much of a focus in the 70s.
Those are some excellent points, and those are definitely some elements that have carried over through all three of those movies, especially the transitive nature of the house, just in and out with the everyone going home for holidays or not. But that's a great segue to move on to just what did they carry over in general from these movies? I mean, you have to justify your existence a little bit and have a little legacy. So they certainly did that with the 2006 and 2019 versions.
Max, I think we should just start off with the simple things. What, on a very base level, what do these movies have in common?
Well, I had to reach a little bit to connect all three of them because this new one takes some turns. So I went with, there's a sorority house. It's Christmas. There's creepy boyfriends. Every lead has an external problem or issue. And there's a death by a Christmas item in each movie.
Okay. Those all happen. I think one of the ones thematically is there, although it's not really as prevalent in the 2006 one, but it's definitely in the original and the 2019 version, is the not being believed by figures of authority. Specifically in the original, it's a police officer at the desk who dismisses the case kind of at hand and says she's probably just shacked up with her boyfriend in a cabin somewhere. And then we have a nice callback to that in the 2019 version where the security guard is dismissing things at hand as well. And then he just delivers almost that same line. Well, she's probably just with her boyfriend somewhere. They usually come back in a couple days kind of thing. And it's just a very convenient excuse to just dismiss women and be like, it's fine. Like, they'll be fine. That kind of a deal.
The plain and simple ones, Max said, there's a cat that likes to be very close to some bodies. I don't know about 2006, but the 2019 one, somebody goes into an attic. She doesn't get killed there, turns out. Plot twist. They're in a house. I do think that the 2019 house looks like a storefront at the Grove, and not a home that anybody would live in, but sure. The use of the time of year, like the use of the phone and messaging, creepy calls, creepy texts, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, we didn't get the calls coming from inside the house all the way through, but
yeah, we got that in the original. We got that in the 2006 version. It's not in the 2019 version, so that's sad. But in some ways, I think what's interesting that I'm realizing, just what we're talking about too, is the 2019 version. Although it has some elements of the original, it feels much more like a remake of the 2006 version, because there's a lot more similarities in there. And I think maybe the filmmakers themselves saw the 2006 version and they're like, oh, this is the opposite of everything we want women characters to be in a movie. So let's make something that is the polar opposite of that, and then drew from both of the previous films to make that happen. Although, as we've discussed, the story not even close to the same. When that first connection happened for me was, I don't remember, you guys can tell me if I'm wrong here, I don't think anyone in the original Black Christmas was killed with an icicle.
You're wrong.
I'm wrong?
No, sorry, that was just habit. Keep going.
I think that first appears in the 2006 version. And in the 2006 version, it's actually an accident. The icicle just friggin' falls from the roof. She's killed by a falling icicle. Nobody murdered her. And that was very disappointing. But then they take that to the next level in the 2019 version and stab her with an icicle. Another one that was a really fun standout moment for me is actually the woman who interacts with the cat the most gets killed because the cat delayed her leaving. She's trying to find the cat. She eventually finds the cat. And by finding the cat, that provides the opportunity for the murderer to then kill them. And so when that was happening in the 2019 version, I was just like, oh my God, it's the same thing. But I think they skipped that in the 2006 version. I don't remember that moment.
They skipped a lot in the 2006 version.
I don't even remember, was there a cat in the 2006 version?
I don't think there was.
Yeah, so they got rid of the cat completely.
They just brought it to the 2019 one to make sure there were some similarities.
Yeah.
That's it.
Although fleetingly, because the cat was named Claudette in the 19 one. In the original one, it was just Claude.
Yeah, it's very upsetting. I don't understand why, but I mean, fine. It can be whatever gender it wants to be. We don't know what it wants. But anyway, it's still obsessed with the black goo and it's still obsessed with bodies because in the first one, the cat goes up to the attic somehow and is just like chilling on the rocking chair. I can't remember which body it was chilling next to, but when she was looking for it, it was like up there being like, what's happening? And the murderer was just like, hey, cat, what up?
It's like, I'm pretty sure that cat would have died immediately. Like, there's no way this creepy dude hiding in the attic doesn't murder the cat, too.
I don't know. I mean, women, cats, like, he clearly hates one more than the other. I really thoroughly enjoyed the house mother in the first film. I know that maybe her acting wasn't as good as everybody else's, but I, like, thoroughly enjoyed her attitude towards the dad, her cursing at the cat, like, just bopping around, hiding booze everywhere. And I just feel like we really miss out on not having that same character throughout. And I understand that having an adult around, like, and they're all adults, but having like this parental figure around kind of hampered some of the plot points, especially the 2019 film. Like, right, like if you had an adult there who'd be like, we have to call the police, like what's like it would just, you wouldn't have the same situation. But like obviously in the 1970s that had to be there. It would be bizarre for them not to have a house mother, but I just thoroughly enjoyed her character.
Yeah, and they have a house mother in the 2006 version as well. And so I'm personally curious when house mothers just disappeared from sororities. When did they no longer be there? But you're right, she's one of the best. She's just the most fun character in the original version for sure. And I think that's one thing that the original Black Christmas also has that the other ones don't. It's funny.
It's fun. Yeah.
There's like for a movie that is, I would say, probably the most serious of all of them, it's also the funniest. And so the fact that it's doing that, it's like, what are the jokes in these other movies? Especially in the 2006 version, I feel like it could have really benefited from some kind of comedy in there because it's got a death count that is pretty staggering. Like that's the difference here is that as the movies go on, progressively more people die. That's kind of how sequels work. And that's what they did with these remakes is more people died in each progressive film, but the deaths were each less impactful. They were more impactful in the original, which is, I think, why it stands up there. And speaking of the deaths, other than the icicle, there's definitely some callbacks in that, right? One of the biggest ones being the death by suffocation using a plastic bag to pull over someone's head and suffocate them. That's in all three films. Overused beyond imagination in the 2006 version. Like 5 people get suffocated by plastic bags. It's like, do something different. But in the 2019 version, it's actually the women who use the plastic bag to kill one of the intruders. So that was a little nice inversion. But so that's there. And then actually, I think the icicle and that. Oh, one more from the 2006 version that's definitely a callback is the person getting killed outside in the car just right down the street. They can see the car, but they're just killed anyway. They're dead in the car. That one, it works much better in the original because they think he's still alive in the car because the killer left the car running outside in the front. It's a police officer watching the house. In the 2006 version, I think they just shoehorned it in because they needed to explain where this dead person went. It doesn't.
I didn't even know who that person was.
Yeah.
Like, did we meet this character?
Yeah, I only figured it out because I was just like, who could it be? Pause the movie and just like backtracks. Like, oh, that's who this dead person is.
To go back to your plastic bag point, I think you've got to look at the point in time when these films were made to really express why it went differently in 2006, right? Like 70s, not a lot of plastic bags. 2006, everybody's mother had an entire cupboard filled with grocery bags that they were saving to use at some point. And this was the purpose. This was what they were saved for. And then, 2019, there's now a tax on those plastic bags in a lot of cities. You can't get them that many. We're going green. They only had the one. Otherwise, I just think it's a product of their time.
And the one in the 2019 version isn't even a regular plastic bag. It's foreshadowed in the movie because it's the plastic bag that her dress is in from the dry cleaners.
Kind of tagging on all of this, it's a product of the time. That's one of the main differences between these movies. Time passes, things change. Plastic becomes a little more toxic, or house moms don't become the norm anymore. So what are the differences in this movie? Like stuff they had to add. Like one big one I always have to remember, and we touched on it a little bit, cell phones. That changed horror movies forever.
They almost get it right in the 2006 version. I think it's like close to doing the right thing of having the call coming from in the house, like her cell phone's missing. But they kind of give the game away really freaking early in that movie because they use caller ID and they find out that it's their roommate's cell phone almost immediately, that that's the person who called them. You need to just like have it be an unlisted number or something, you know, give us a little, like find out later that it's her phone. Don't find out right away that your roommate is the one who called. It takes so much away from it in that moment. Otherwise, it works pretty well because you have these cell phones in the house. It's not like you're lost somewhere and you would need to make the phone call. But I don't think it works.
You mentioned earlier the increasing amount of bodies in all of these movies. That's kind of along the same lines as the increasing amount of killers in each movie.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. You're totally right.
Yeah, one killer in the original. You got two in the 06 remake, and you got, 15 plus killers in the new one?
I do think, so in the original, right, I think it would be hard to explain a bunch of sorority women going missing. It's easy to be like, this person was traveling, this person was, you have the one who's supposed to be her dad, but the other ones, they aren't nobody quickly realizes they're gone or missing or anything. If you stack up a bunch of bodies, it just becomes even more unreasonable as to figure out, have we not solved this? How have we not come up with a better game plan to survive this situation? And then in the 2019 one, the bodies it's not so many sorority sisters that are going missing. It's just like this army of zombie misogynists, like bleeding black goo. So like the bad guys are getting killed. And at that point we're at war with demons. So like, that's how but like, I just think if you have so many like sorority sisters just dropping dead, like it just becomes like the period of time where you're still like not positive, your characters are not positive people are dead. They think they're sleeping in their bed. They think they are on the train. Don't worry about it. We'll hear from her soon. It gives you like all this time to work with. But if they're just like dying, like it's not reasonable to be like, oh, she's fine.
I think the body count, although extreme in the 2006 version, it kind of still works in that way because a lot of the people who die are like these ancillary characters that they added for the sequel. Like we have like a security guard that gets killed, a Santa Claus that gets killed, his mom and his dad get killed, and then his mom and then his stepdad get killed. So that's like 6 people right there, 5 or 6 people that get killed that aren't part of the sorority. Then you throw in all of the 2 killers get killed. So that's 8. And so then the rest of them are these sorority girls. So it's like, okay, it's still too many for people to not put the pieces together, but the number isn't quite as extreme when you think about it like that. But you're totally right that in the first movie, for the tension to be there just can't be as many kills. It needs to move at a little bit more of a methodical pace instead of the manic pace that the 2006 version gets.
And I think there's something to be said about just like the technical innovations they put into the 2006 and 19 versions too, because 30 years of cinematic technology. Like they hadn't even invented the Steadicam yet at that point. So getting all that stuff and putting it all into 2006, I feel like that's a great way to transition into a good segment that I call better or worse. What are some ways that these movies either improved upon the original or just destroyed it?
Just hearing you say like the technical aspects, I really feel like if you took the filmmaking technology that we have now and you did a shot for shot remake of the 1974 and you had the actors of same quality of skill, like you could make it very like excellent film. Some of the camera work they used in the original just like didn't quite look as great. It wasn't very smooth. It was clearly like a tripod. But from a visual standpoint, I mean, the 2019, you've got all these effects. You've got these dudes who are bleeding black goo and stuff. I don't think it makes it better.
Yeah, I think it's to its detriment.
I think one of the things that is interesting, not technologically here, but we have an R-rated film, and then a PG-13 film. More people die in the PG-13 film. There's more blood in the 2006 version, but I think the most graphically violent one out of all of them is the original. And that's a weird thing, but I think that's something that they did better is, partially because they made the impact of each death matter more, but also because in like the 2006 version and even in the 2019 version, it's kind of like they're hiding the murders, right? Like the blood isn't quite on screen, or the impact wound isn't on screen. It's not shown. It's shown off screen. In 2006, there's like an unbelievable amount of blood splatter, but we never see the impact where someone gets hit. We just see the splatter itself. And in the first one, like, man, when he stabs that woman in bed with the glass animal, or when he suffocates her with the plastic bag, we really see that. And they just, in the first one they did it better, and then in the sequels they tried to do it differently, and the way they did it, it doesn't work.
I hate to draw this conclusion right now at the very tail end of this whole conversation, but the black goo is probably because they couldn't have the blood because it's PG-13.
Yeah, I didn't think about that until you just said that, but that's almost 100% correct.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, it didn't help anything at all, but I kind of appreciated, just as a horror fan, the amount of gore that went into the 2006 version. It's its only redeeming quality in my eyes. And I say my eyes because there's a whole lot of eye gouging in that movie.
Yes.
They show Billy ripping out eyeballs with the stuff still attached, and he makes flesh Christmas cookies from his mom's back. And like, that's intense stuff. And that made me just cringe. And that's the kind of stuff I want in my horror sometimes.
So yes, I will give you that. But even those, it's like, they don't show him actually like cutting her flesh. They show him about to. And with the eye gouging thing, with the exception of one, when he friggin' eye gouges his stepdad, that one I was like, okay, we really did that. That really crazy. He shoves like a Christmas tree topper through his eye. That one got me. But all the other ones, it's the aftermath. And I feel like part of that is, had they gone full on with all of that violence, it's probably an X rating. I feel like they had to cut out some impact stuff, or intentionally didn't shoot it in order to avoid that with that much blood. And like Tara mentioned, yeah, the black goo has got to be black goo, because if it's blood, we're getting an R rating, maybe. I mean, probably not with that movie, but gets closer to that even unrated's territory.
As I say, X rating is kind of exclusively granted to adult content, and it would be like NC-17 or something if you were.
It's like, or whatever's perceived as adult contact. The MPA, they're villains in their own right in certain ways, but that's not the subject of this podcast. So we've already been talking a little bit about how these movies have, deviated from the original. However, one thing they definitely all have in common: they did not make any money.
Okay, so they all tanked, huh?
Yes, indeed. The original Black Christmas Canadian import, it only made about $4.1 million total, although it was made for $620,000, so not a whole loss there. But
it was, it was profitable for the production company, but not a massive success by any means.
Mm-hmm. Whereas, you got Black Christmas in 2006, U.S., it made $16 million, only $5 million internationally, so you got just about $21 million worldwide. And the remake, which I have to mention was made in only 6 months and was barely advertised by Blumhouse, made $10 million domestically, $8 million overseas, for $18 million off of a budget of $5 million.
Did you by chance get the budget for the 2006 version?
It was $9 million for that one.
Okay.
So they all were profitable, kind of.
Yeah, they all made enough money to justify their existence, I guess.
Financially speaking, yes, they justified themselves. Thematically, maybe not as much.
And so, as is tradition, we got to continue with this and go into some of the critical reviews. We've already talked a little bit about our own opinions, but what did the critics have to say about these movies?
Well, I'm going to go in reverse on this particular one. Because, this last Black Christmas, not liked. Rotten Tomatoes, you got it at 38% critically. Audience has it at 31%. And Metacritic has it at 49 out of 100. User rating is 2 out of 10. Although I will mention, half of this is because of just spamming, because Lord knows the knuckle draggers do not like a women-powered film.
Yeah, women, man.
Part of me was thinking, oh, I bet you this is tanked a little bit like Ghostbusters was tanked. Just people intentionally dropping the nose on these movies.
Yeah, like I read through some of the comments, which you should never ever do. But yeah, there's definitely some hating in there. It's like the same kind of deal as Captain Marvel and the new Star Wars movies and that shit.
Great.
Yay, misogyny still
Yeah.
alive and kicking. Ugh.
Jumping back to 2006, 06 Black Christmas. Rotten Tomatoes has it at 14%, audience 37, with Metacritic having it at 22 out of 100, and weirdly enough, 4.7 out of 10 user rating on Metacritic, which is kind of weird. And then, of course, the original, which I think this actually should be adjusted for inflation in some way. Rotten Tomatoes has it at 71%, audience 75, and Metacritic has it at 65 out of 100 with a user score of 7.4. So clearly the original is the best liked all around. However, it's one of those movies that's at the dawn of film criticism for online stuff. And I think it's just a lack of ratings that kept it that low, because I'm going to go ahead and say this is one of the best horror films ever made. Like, this is a great movie.
Well, what you're saying, I agree that it's a great movie, but it's also not that low. Those are pretty good scores overall, especially for horror movies, which, critically tend to take a bit more of a hit because it's not everyone's cup of tea, and horror movies are generally kind of looked down upon. I went to a Q&A with Richard Donner once, and he directed The Omen, and The Omen is an amazing movie. But a person in the audience asked him, so how does it feel to have made one of the greatest horror movies of all time? And he's like, I've never made a horror movie. I made a thriller. And I was just like, it still permeates to this day that people don't want to be associated with horror films because it seems like it won't allow them to do other work.
I think these are definitely horror movies, though, because half of them exist just to be counter-programming, particularly the remakes. 06 version released on Christmas Day.
Nice. That's a smart move, team.
And then, yeah, just last year, this new Black Christmas was dropped on Friday the 13th of December.
They really lucked out. Do you think that's why they were like, we got to make this in 6 months because we have to make this December Friday the 13th release date because it won't come again for like 6 years?
Oh, God. It would make sense if that actually was how it happened, but I can't believe there was a whole lot to do with the Friday the 13th, because 6 months is just a stupid amount of time for a movie, even if it's cheaply made. And I do mean that in both senses.
Yeah, I mean, I think the original is just, I think it's exceptional in the sense that it was the first to do some of these things. It used these points, like I mentioned earlier, the like people being out of town and their schedules being in flux, using the holiday to mask like these crimes, things like that, the caller coming from inside the house, just these different levels so successfully and at a time when you didn't have a lot of this kind of stuff. You didn't have this technology of tracking calls and things like that, where it wasn't even like, the most commonplace. Now it's like, oh, you got to keep them on the line, and like in every CSI, Law and Order, whatever thing. But that coming at that time, having great acting, not having these women as these like sexualized tropes, I just feel like, yeah, I could see if it had been something where it had been re-released or something where people were newly reviewing it, those numbers could be even higher.
And I think one of the things that you just mentioned, we hadn't really talked about at all, is just some of the tropes that this movie started. And one of them is definitely tracing the call and keeping people on the line. But what this movie did so well, I'm not sure how real it is exactly, but it feels real. But they had him in a physical space trying to trace the call. And that added a whole new element to it, that he's actually at the phone company trying to physically chase down the line that this is coming through. And that kind of made it even more tense when we eventually get to the point to find out that the call is coming from inside the house. Another huge trope that they obviously started with this movie. And seeing those things happen in such a good way, because I think one of the things that really, above all else, that sets the first movie apart is it's just the performances. I think the performances are just not what you like. You go back to 1974 and it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out that same year. No one will ever say that the performances in Texas Chainsaw Massacre are particularly good, with the exception of Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface. Like, that's kind of about it. Nobody talks about those performances being great. But in Black Christmas, that was the thing that stood out for me immediately is these women, they're acting appropriately, it seems. They're not making these rash decisions. They're thinking it through and they're having actual emotional response. Like they have good downtime and good pauses. Like when their friend, when they break down, they actually cry like a couple of times in the movie in logical points where, oh yeah, our friend was murdered, this little girl died. These are points that they actually let breathe in the original.
Yeah, I mean, the most outrageous performance is either the house mom or Margot Kidder's character, the drunk. And all of those are like character-based funny parts. I use the air quotes again. But it's all based on character development used previous. So yeah, they're great performances. I always have to mention this as well because our collective film professors would hit us if we didn't mention that the first serial killer POV was in Peeping Tom, which is funny because our professor's Tom Brando. But so yeah, it was a trope used before, but it was like cemented in Black Christmas and later surpassed in Halloween. So Black Christmas is definitely one of those underrated movies.
I would put it in that category for sure. And I'd also make the argument that with Peeping Tom, he's actually filming people. He has his own camera. So that POV isn't quite the same. It's not just a character perspective. He's using his camera. And in Black Christmas, in the beginning, I was actually sitting there. I'm like, what did they do when he climbed the ladder? Did they just friggin' duct tape the camera to the top of this guy's head so he could climb the ladder up into the attic? That was a great shot. And to see that done, like Tara mentioned, if we were to do that now with just like a steady cam up there and have that smoothness to it, it could be a really good movie.
I would hope for its sake that it's a good movie because the very end of this type of show, we have to ask, did any of these remakes have to happen? Did this need to be done? And if it was, mildly entertaining, was it worth it to have it exist in the first place?
Well, who wants to go first on this one?
As I mentioned, I think the 2019 one, like there's some good things in there, and I could see a really great feminist horror film be created with like some more realistic real life terror from just the misogyny. But I don't think any of these are remakes, and I don't think a remake needs to be made of the actual plot, like the actual Black Christmas. I think they're like, I don't know, just other versions that have somewhat loosely tied to the idea of a murder at a sorority house at Christmas. And I don't think any of them, aside from the original, needed to be made at all. I get what they're going for in 2006 and 2019, and I just don't think you could just put that money into something better.
It's like, I 100% agree. 2019 could have been its own horror movie with those same morals. And yeah, the remake part of Black Christmas did not need to happen. 06, even more so. It should be wiped from the face of the earth because there's no reason it needed to exist, especially with that yellow bastard.
These movies didn't need to be made. They didn't really add anything to the line of Black Christmas. The 2006 version really only takes away. It puts a bad remembrance of the Black Christmas name into existence, which it wouldn't have had otherwise. And then the 2019 version, it's not Black Christmas. It's not even close to the same story. So it just could have been named something else. What the 2019 version feels like is it feels like the 2019 Black Christmas is just, it's a remake in name only. It doesn't have enough to do with the original. It just took the name. It's much like a lot of people complain about one of my favorite movies, Starship Troopers. It's just the name of the movie. It's not even close to the original book, to the original novel. So it's like it exists in that same plane only because they chose the same name. Same thing with like Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. They could have named it Season of the Witch, and it would be its own thing. It doesn't have to be connected to that universe, but because it is, it changes how we have to look at it. And in the case of both Season of the Witch and Black Christmas, I think it hurt them.
Well, there you have it. We pretty much all universally agree that the original is best, and the remakes didn't need to happen.
But before we go, we've got to ask our sister who we brought on for the specific purpose of helping us with Christmas movies. How do you rank them in terms of Christmas quality? Which one is the most appropriate for the Christmas season?
Yeah, I think it's tough because while I love the original Black Christmas, it's not very Christmas involved. I mean, Christmas is happening. People are traveling for Christmas. It's winter. That's about it. And then you've got 2006. I mean, it's Christmas, and somebody gets stabbed with a Christmas tree star, and it's pretty festive if you're going to go down that path. And 2019, everything is covered in some kind of Christmas decor. Everything, every inch of that house. Girl goes into the attic to get more lights because it wasn't already covered enough in lights. They do some kind of Mean Girls style sexy Santa dance, but also confront a rapist at the same time, which feels festive. That's the only word I got.
Festive seems good. Seems appropriate.
Seems festive. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go with like number 3 place is going to be the original in Christmasness. Didn't even need to be called Black Christmas, just a holiday horror situation. I'm gonna go with number 2 is going to be 2006, and number 3 just spitting Christmas all over you like the black goo flinging from a fraternity brother's face. The most Christmassy 2019.
I like it. I think 2006 in some ways has more Christmas elements, but the thing about 2006 is it makes you hate those Christmas elements. Like it doesn't, it's just like
that's true. There's a bit more like Santa Claus and all these like themes of holidays and family.
And they impale the bad guy on a Christmas tree at the very end of the movie.
That's very true. It does get very gory in the Christmas. I just feel like nothing says happy holidays like women dancing in sexy Santa costumes.
It should have been Red Christmas.
Oh, okay. That could have worked.
Here's the thing. Do we think that really the 2019 stays the truest to the Black Christmas title by having a bunch of black goo shooting out all over their Christmas decor? It is a Black Christmas.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. I think that's pretty spot on.
It's literal.
The logic is infallible.
2006, a bit more figurative. It's a dark, dark Christmas.
Okay, before we end this show, there is one thing. Being from North Dakota, the 2019 version is so friggin' obviously not shot anywhere that it's cold that it just frustrated the hell out of me. All the snow is fake. The way that the snow is on the buildings is fake. The way that they're laying in it is fake. No one has fog coming out of their mouths when they're breathing. It's not winter.
You know where they filmed it?
Where did they film it?
New Zealand.
This is exactly where I think of when I think of Christmas.
Exactly.
Well,
it's a place we'd all like to be in this Christmas.
Yes, absolutely. Where they have their shit figured out, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on Twinema Cinema for our first episode of Remade. Thank you for being a part of this, Sister Tara. You're not a sister in the religious sense, but you're a sister in the familial sense, which...
Also the sorority sense, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like not the 2006 sister sense. Like we're not there. It's the...
Okay, you need to just start over on that because that is very uncomfortable. So I'd like that not to be part of it.
Okay. Thank you,
sister daughter.
No, cut it. Cut that right out. Cut that right out.
So thank you so much for joining us, Tara, on this episode. We appreciate having you come in and fill us with your expertise and just join us on this show.
Please like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Hey, give us some 5 stars. It's Christmas. And also, like all of our Instagrams, our Twitters, our YouTubes, and hey, visit coffee.com and give us a few shekels if you have any chance.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate you.
Guys, you got to give me a chance to tell people to follow me on my Instagram. I'm your guest.
So Tara, give us a shout out for your Instagram and your social media handles where people can reach you.
You can follow me on Instagram at KTarasera. That's QUETARASERA. I've
never once pronounced it that way.
It's like K Sarah Sarah.
Oh, it makes so much more sense now that you've said it.
Her name is Tara now.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. We appreciate you. And please, for the love of God, just wear your friggin' masks.
And then stay safe, Happy Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and holidays.
Bye.